Hello everyone and welcome back to another Feral Druid video. Today I'm going to be focusing on single target beta stuff. Not necessarily hitting you with like a best build per se, but talking you through a couple options right now and just how things are looking from like a Feelycraft perspective. Of course, when it comes down to it and tuning is finally implemented and we have the new tier set and Blizzard kind of like, right, that's your lot, then we can look at, you know, probably simming a best build and whatnot. But this is going to be for pure single target, so this is probably something that you will be able to sim reasonably easy. But this is just, you know, like I say, some feely crafting that I was doing, but I also want to talk to you about the process by which you're going to be tracking things, either by weak auras or in your head, however you want to do it, depending on your single target build. Now, there's a couple things in our rotation right now that you're going to have to be, or wanting to be tracking in order to maximizing your DPS. Of course, there is the traditional Blood Talons generation, and spending, generating, spending. So that's going to be something that's going to be continuing. You don't have to play Blood Talons if you don't want to. It is now a choice node, so keep that in mind. But it's something like 60% stronger or so in order to take Blood Talons over Lion Strength. So Blood Talons is still worth taking in single target. Now on top of that, you're going to have the normal snapshotting with Tiger Fury on your Rake and your Rip. But apart from that, those are like your basics still kind of continuing on from Shadowlands. But on top of that, we now have a couple talents that you're going to be wanting to keep in mind when you're actually playing. So one of those is Sudden Ambush, which is finishing moves have a 10% chance per combo point spent. So when you use a finishing move, you have a 50% chance to make your next Rake or Shred deal damage as though you were stealthed. And because of this talent, your Shred and Rake, when used from stealth, do 60% increased damage. So Sudden Ambush is going to be something that's really important to make sure that you're maintaining always a max strength Rake. So not only are you going to have to track your Blood Talons generation and track your Tiger Fury uptime, but you're also going to want to make sure that you're reapplying your Rake during your Sudden Ambush windows and not just kind of willy-nilly. On top of that, you have Raging Fury, which is actually going to increase the and extend the time in which your Tiger Fury, you know, lasts. So that's going to make that a little bit easier as well. You're going to be able to fit Sudden Ambush and Tiger Fury Rakes in a nice window. And eventually when our crit chance increases even more and things like that, like these things are just going to be even easier to maintain, like Raging Fury particularly. So yeah, those are a couple things to register. Also, something to note with Sudden Ambush is that Apex procs do actually trigger Sudden Ambush. So if you're playing Apex on like single target or maybe an AoE or something, then that's something to keep in mind. I'll also note really quick on Sudden Ambush, I know this isn't single target related, but Double Clawed Rake right now, if you take it, it is actually not increasing the damage of the second Rake with your Sudden Ambush. So when you Rake one target, the second target is not getting an amplification from Sudden Ambush, but neither is the main target, but it's consuming your Sudden Ambush. So we're assuming that's a bug. I'm assuming that's a bug, that both of those Rakes in that Sudden Ambush, Double Clawed Rake, both of those should be affected by Sudden Ambush, in which case you would get a 60% empowered Rake on both targets. It's not happening right now. As well, I mean, those are the main things that you're going to be tracking, basically. Blood Talons, Raging Fury, Sudden Ambush, and kind of just keeping those in mind. If you are going to be playing Primal Claws, there's also something as well that you have a 20% chance per combo point, per combo point generator to get an extra combo point, so just kind of keep that in mind as well. Those are kind of like, I guess, the main things that you're going to be actively tracking. And then of course as well, you're going to have Adaptive Swarm if you are going to be playing Adaptive Swarm. So you also want to try and maximize that Adaptive Swarm uptime. If you're then going to be playing with Feral Frenzy, you want to make sure that you're trying to Feral Frenzy during your Tiger Fury, but not only that, Feral Frenzy actually works with Frenzy Band. So during your Berserk window, if you can try and have the two line up, then you will see a minor damage increase from that as well, though it's not the most important thing, I think, as well, based on the lining up, because I don't think that they will regularly really line up together at all, really. So just something to keep in mind there. Now, when I was playing with these various builds, I was finding that they were all doing roughly 31 to 34k DPS overall. So maybe like a 10% difference at most between some of these builds. But that, of course, is considering that there's some random RNG with this. It's a very small sample size. It's going to be dependent on my gear, right? Like, am I haste heavy? Am I crit heavy? Do I have the right stats in order to complement each one of these builds? Because different stats are going to complement different builds. But unfortunately, you know, I can't make it a perfect vacuum environment. You know, I can't really control too many of these variables, really, unfortunately. So keep those things in mind as well. There are like random trinket procs and building and spending of those things, so keep that in mind. But what I also found, you know, like, is Convoke dead? Is it gonna be done for? I don't think it will be completely gone, but it's looking decent right now as like an additional kind of burst damage ability, though I don't think you're gonna necessarily heavily invest in it. Now what I'll do is I'll actually kind of just show off a couple builds from things that I was testing. So this is one of my pure single target builds. It involves going 1 minute Convoke and Feral Frenzy in order to like maximize your kind of single target burst potential, and could be good if you are maybe assigned to like a single target mob. So maybe there's like a boss fight, and I haven't tested all of the raid yet, so we'll see how that goes, but maybe you're assigned to like, there's gonna be an ad that spawns and you want to kill it as quickly as possible. Well, then you could be assigned to that ad quite easily, and you could burst that down with 1 minute Convoke and Feral Frenzy. That's what I'm going for there. Also, I played with another build, so this was sent to me by Matya in chat, and they wanted me to look at this build, though I've actually deviated from it slightly somehow. They were actually playing with a Relentless Predator build as well. I think I switched off Rip and Tear there to get Relentless Predator, because then we were comparing Relentless Predator to Vein Ripper, and those two as an option. So I'll talk through both of these talents here. I actually, even though this has pretty much every single energy talent on this tree, right? Soul, Cat's Curiosity, Double Tireless, stuff like that, it still felt pretty good to get Relentless Predator. It basically means when you take a Relentless Predator that you can Ferocious Bite at 40 energy instead of 50 energy, but with the addition of Tireless Energy and stuff like that, you just basically max out on energy a lot of the time, and even when you started to dip low, you were never really having to hold for very long. Maybe you have to hold for like half a second, if that. So I actually did feel Relentless Predator existing in this build, but then we compared it to, okay, well, what if for one point you just took Vein Ripper, or for one point you took like Apex or something like that, or Rip and Tear? You know, if Rip and Tear is still going to be tuned up well, you have various options and things that you can take, so to be what ends up being the strongest out of these options. But I think Vein Ripper was a good option. It meant that you could always ensure that your sudden ambush, you know, you could play it a little bit slower and you wouldn't get overwhelmed. Say you want to play Feral, you want to play one of the more complex builds, but you feel like really quick tick and bleeds, plus generating blood talents, plus sudden ambush, like plus adaptive swarm uptime. I think all these things are going to be quite overwhelming. Vein Ripper, I would suggest actually picking up Vein Ripper rather than dropping blood talents, because Vein Ripper actually gives you the benefit of circle, but without actually the downside of your bleeds, like the duration of them ticking quicker. So it allows you more time to do these things and apply these things. It ultimately results in more Ferocious Bites. That's what it's ultimately doing for you. Both of these talents, that's what they're kind of aiming for. So that's what it's going to end up doing. Note with this build that you will not be picking up your defensive, so you could always opt for that as well if you're like progging a boss and you want to grab your defensive. So that's something cool to kind of consider there with that build. But that was sent like I say, from Matt. In terms of other builds, you don't have to, I mean, this is a 1 minute Convoke build. If I wasn't going to go 1 minute Convoke, I would drop this, I'd pick up Adaptive and go the other Carnivorous, right? This would be like a really good all-round single target build. It's got a little bit of burst, but not like mega heavy, and you could even go like 2 minute Convoke instead if you wanted to. If you really wanted to, but if you're just so against, if you're anti-Convoke, you can pick up Feral Frenzy instead for Adaptive, which is pretty good. You can also drop either of those, and again, pick up Rip and Tear or Vein Ripper, you know, if you want to play this Adaptive Swarm build, but again, with the bleed thing. But this was cool. It was basically mainly just playing around Feral Frenzy and Adaptive Swarm. It wasn't really too difficult, but the nice thing is you get your double Carnivorous Instinct, which is just getting a flat 12% damage on pretty much near enough 100% uptime on your Tiger Fury, so that's good. Also running the sudden ambush style. You can see the main bulk of a lot of these builds are, you know, initially very similar. You're not going to go down this right hand side for your single target, though. Let's say you were playing this build and suddenly, you know, there was some intermittent ad cleave or something, you can just drop Feral Frenzy and you can pick up Primal Wrath for next to nothing there, pretty much get it for free, and you immediately can keep all of your single target. You can keep all of your single target. Imagine you're doing like Denathrius, right? And you're gonna get these waves in phase 1 where you're gonna kind of get these ads, but you don't really want to take, like, you don't want to take Terrible Wound, you don't want to take Rampant Frosty, you don't want to go like at Apex, you don't want to go heavy AoE, but you just want like that nice little extra bit. Bam, you can pick up Primal Wrath very easily with a lot of these single target builds and maintain the bulk of all of these things, so that's good. Also, Primal Claws here. I did try a build with Primal Claws, and I thought that it was okay. I personally am preferring Tireless Energy in terms of raw feeling. Now, with Feral Druid, just because something feels good doesn't mean it's necessarily the higher damage per second build, but this definitely felt better to have Tireless. But yeah. Again, with this build, you can also pick up Infected Wounds if you wanted to and grab the rakes there. But yeah, all in all, I did really kind of like playing Feral on single target right now. And you can still see that, you know, pretty much Ferocious Bite is still your rank 1 damage, even if you're not playing. I mean, even when I wasn't playing with Convoke, Ferocious Bite is still like your top damage. But the way I'm looking at it is per use, right? Like, per application of Rip compared to Ferocious Bite, Rip is doing more damage per application than Ferocious Bite. So you are still very bleed heavy, especially, you know, you see a Rake there doing double that of Shred. So you are very, like, bleed heavy still. You got Frenzied Assault and stuff in there, Adaptive Swarm in there. So you are still very bleed heavy, but Ferocious Bite is still doing a lot of damage. And I wanted to kind of end this video on single target by talking a little bit about that Ferocious Bite, and maybe I can skip ahead to a little bit of more gameplay on stuff. But I wanted to talk about Ferocious Bite a little bit. So right now, Blizzard is making a big emphasis to buff our bleeds, specifically or mainly Rip. And they're trying to do that with our tier sets and various nerfs and things and alterations that they've just done on the beta this week. And I am a bleed Feral, right? Like, I want Feral to be bleed based, but I am wary, and you guys can quote me on this now, like later, you know, the 0.1 patch, 0.2 patch, wherever, you can quote me on this. I am a little bit worried about too much of our damage coming from bleeds. The reason being is I feel like the way that our spec is designed, particularly with these new talents, is that Ferocious Bite is a really good talent to be the tuning knob for our single target and our AoE, so that we can still have really good AoE, really good single target, and be good in PvP without any one of those things being broken as a result. My problem is if you buff Rip too much in Raid, or Rake, either one, if you buff him too much in the Raid, that's going to disproportionately affect PvP, potentially, but it's also going to disproportionately affect our AoE, because as you turn that tuning knob up on Rip on single target, it's going to disproportionately be scaling up your AoE, because all of your AoE is Rip damage as well because of Tear Open Wound, Sabretooth, Rampant Frosty, Apex procs, like those things causing Tear Open Wound, Sabretooth, like your Rip to generally do more damage. On top of that, Primal Wrath applies Rip to every mob. So I'm wary of that tuning knob causing our AoE to be so big that we end up getting a nerf to like that area of the game. So I'm wary of that. I do think that for me right now, I do think that Ferocious Bite was a really good way to tune our single target but not affect our AoE, and that being via Rampant Frosty. So you can have your Ferocious Bite doing quite a bit of damage and being like the kind of single target emphasis, and if it gets too strong in AoE, then you can nerf Rampant Frosty without affecting our AoE, and we can still get the benefit from our bleeds in AoE without being like Ferocious Bite doing too much damage there. Having said all of this, you can probably still tune things where our single target is still good, and there's things like you can have PvP modifiers that won't affect PvE, and maybe there's a way that they can affect our Rip damage being amplified on single target, because like right now our single target in raids and stuff isn't really that amazing, and a lot of our burst damage is gone, and this is the downside, right? You cannot have consistent damage and have like this slow single target, like bleed heavy playstyle, but then on top of that also have really, really, really good burst. And you can't have instant damage. Like, you can't have both, because then you do everything, right? And that's not really how the game should be played. So I'm worried about people going, oh man, we don't burst any damage, and people like overlooking Feral because the burst damage is low, but across the course of a fight, our damage being, you know, leveling out a little bit. And also, as fights get quicker and quicker post prog, then like, will we drop off that a little bit more? I don't know. We'll see. But just something that I'm kind of aware of and wary of. I still want Feral to be bleed based. I just don't want it to be so bleed based that it ends up kicking us, you know, like biting us in the ass. Ironically, it would ferocious bite us in the ass if it was kind of too strong on bleeds. It's just something I'm aware of, because I know that Blizzard is scared of balancing around bleeds. So just something I'm kind of considering there with some of these builds. But right now, to kind of summate the video, I do think that there's various options with like Adaptive Swarm, Convoke, both. You can take both of these if you want to. You can take neither of them. You know, you could do like something like that. You can go something like this. I think you can even do that. Yeah, you can have you can have 1 minute Convoke, Adaptive Swarm, and Feral Frenzy, which is sick. I was actually testing this and it was doing pretty well as well. So there's like really cool options where you can actually kind of get everything that you want. You can play all the different play styles if you want to. So we definitely have a nice like ease of access into various different single target builds, and they're all doing roughly the same damage, which for me would be really awesome, because then you can just play the one that you prefer. And even if it's doing 2% less damage, 4% less damage, 8% less damage, whatever, if you can play it and get away with it and be more comfortable on it, then that's awesome. But this video is going on a little bit too long. I don't want it to go, you know, crazy, but these are just some thoughts that I've had whilst I've been streaming today. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.